Welcome to Healing in a Conflict, Module 7, where we're going to go through the 1, 2, 4, 8 of Healing in a Conflict, check out what sort of questions there might be, and then move into some micro skills to do with how to help couples navigate conflict in a way that minimizes escalation, which is their way of limit setting from an adult to adult point of view, and then showing couples, parents, how to set and enforce limits with their children in a way that's both effective and sensitive, similarly, without the usual escalations. So just to recap with Healing in a Conflict, to look at that there is one being and every signal is part of it, so that there's that constant thinking that everything that's going on is going on within this individual, and this individual is part of one huge evolution, and that the signals that you're seeing, as disturbing as they might be, are actually part of a process, something that's coming from somewhere and actually trying to move the person to their next best moment of evolution. So to think in terms of all of the signals are all part of the process, not apart from the process. That there are two realities: external molecular reality, 5 senses, touch, taste, etc., and the internal consequential reality, which is the reality that we mostly deal with, that's extremely consequential. The thoughts, the feelings, that which goes on internally, that is the impulse for what ends up being behaviors that end up external and often end up disturbing in people's lives. And we start from the internal. Later on this session, we're going to work with some micro skills that are very much external micro skills, helping people with their behaviors, but keeping it very much in mind that that's part of the one person, being, which means that we're not expecting that because they're going to learn some skills on how to set and enforce limits within their relationship and how to set and enforce limits with their children or those in their care, that all of a sudden reading a piece of paper is miraculously going to make that change. There'll be a logical, rational mind expectation that, all right, well, now I understand this, I'll be able to do that. We know that there's a reason why it hasn't happened yet, and that actually these limit-setting tools, whether it's the conflict navigation guide or how to set and enforce limits with children, is actually going to be a diagnostic tool. It's going to show the person or the couple what it is they're not able to do. Then we'll do inner work to help them with what it is that gets triggered that stops them from being able to deal with what's going on neutrally. And that, of course, is the healing trying to happen. The triggered response, the disturbance, that's actually not something going wrong, it's something trying to go right, disturbing the individual or the relationship to the point that they seek help in order to see what is it that has happened that's led to that disturbance, what's trying to happen, in the way of beginning to understand how they might be able to continue without the triggered response by doing the healing from finding out where that comes from, because they're not acting in a present moment adult way. And that's where the 4 mechanisms come in. We've gone through child, adolescent, adult, and self-distraction mechanisms. We'll go through that a little bit more in detail. But it's those mechanisms that are going to be what makes it difficult for the individuals and the couples to actually work with the conflict navigation guide and the setting limits with children template, because what they were trained with is going to trigger them, and they're going to want to be able to set and enforce limits in a neutral way, but they're going to get triggered and they're going to raise their voice, they're going to do things, they're going to not be able to do or say what they said they would. And that's going to be the work for internal healing that we'll use the cards for. And of course that takes us to the floor cards, which we'll work more in detail with later on once we've been through these micro skills. Just before we do that, I just want to see if there's any questions. And for those of you watching the masterclass by some medium, you can use what's available to you in the way of emails in order to do that. We're going to do that here with the people who are involved, and I'll repeat the question so that everybody can hear it. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah?
When you talk about signals, what do you mean by signals?
Yeah, so I think that's in one of the modules where basically anything is a signal that's noticeable. So it's a very broad net. So you could have someone who stares off, who doesn't answer the question, who starts to tap their foot and do this all of a sudden, or starts to put one foot on the other. Now, any of these things could be, well, I've got an itchy nose. But if it repeats itself, and you notice every time that they're talking about certain something, there's that, or they're biting the inside of their lips, or they're laughing at something that's obviously not at all funny, then that which is noticeable, so it doesn't require you as a counsellor to know what is or isn't a signal. It just requires you to be looking for them. And what you're looking for is matches and mismatches. So if someone's laughing at something that's very tragic, that's a mismatch. Presences and absences. Oh yeah, well, no, I didn't have Dad, so that's really nothing for me. Probably not, because it's a huge absence. And sensitivities and insensitivities. Oh yeah, my whole family got run over yesterday, but I'm all right. And you can see this lack of sensitivity to what that would be for any infant, child. So you'd be looking at where does this come from? And they're just 3 simple coat hangers, and they each have heads and tails. And it just helps you take whatever signal that you're noticing and help you put it into a category of which one is that? Is it a match? Is it a mismatch? Is it a presence? Is it an absence? Is it a sensitivity? Is it an insensitivity? That then helps you, as you do with the 4 mechanisms, to get a very clear picture in a very short period of time, because you've kind of got categories to put things in, as opposed to just a general awareness, a general listening. So it's a very good question, what are signals? And you know, we're going to practice them a lot as we go through the modules in the practice modules. Does that answer the question? Cool. Any others? Okay. So let's move on to conflict navigation. Now, this is, I would say, one of the pillars of how people struggle in relationships, in families. because for eons, coming from caveman times through the Middle Ages, through World War I and II and everything since, all of the methods that we've been trained with in order to deal with conflict have been the opposite of effective and ideal and sensitive. So what we come to the party with is methodology that either is effective but insensitive, ineffective and insensitive, or ineffective and insensitive. So the way you want to begin to look at how to deal with conflict is to go, is it effective? Is it sensitive? Because that's the bullseye, where it's effective and sensitive. But you've got to remember that for most of us, what we're brought up with is a combination of ineffective and insensitive, so that you can see that this is not something going wrong for the person, that they're not being effective or that they're not being sensitive. So you want to begin with the premise that this is very normal relative to how we were trained, but normal doesn't mean healthy, ideal, effective. So to make this distinction. And so these are micro skills, and we'll start to use the conflict navigation guide, because this is what you're going to sit down with couples and get them to be able to have a template for how do we do this.